Good afternoon, everyone. We are at the last chapter of the book of Numbers, chapter 36. I draw your attention to, uh, I guess at that point in time, we should be looking at Numbers chapter 26 and then chapter 27 as we link up to chapter 36. Reason being is that all of these are related to each other because of this particular chapter, what it is supposed to do with regards to inheritance. Chapter 36 begins, uh, now the chief fathers of the families of the children of Gilead. Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, the families of the sons of Joseph came near and spoke before Moses and before the leaders, the chief fathers of the children of Israel. Now, when you talk about the chief fathers, it would be the head, right? The head of the fathers, head of the fathers. So all the fathers had a head to the families. This would be the clan of the sons of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, the families or the clans of the sons of Joseph, they came near to speak to Moses because there was a problem before the this one here, the leaders would be the chiefs, right? This would be the leaders, the chiefs. And then this particular word here would be the head of fathers of the sons of Israel. And here there is a situation at hand. And the situation at hand was a consequence of Numbers chapter 26, the census, the second census, and then chapter 27, with regards to a family where they had no sons. And they said, you see, the Lord, Jehovah, commanded my Lord, and this would be, this what Moses is not there, but we know by implication is Moses, to give the land as an inheritance by lot to the sons of Israel. Now, this word here, verse 2, literally to the sons, right? The sons of Israel. The inheritance were never given to the daughters of Israel, except when there was an exception, right? And my Lord Moses was commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance of our brother, and this is Zelophehad. Zelophehad had no sons, right? To our brother Zelophehad, and was given to his daughters instead. Now, notice this is a situation in Numbers 26 and then to 27. This is very important to link back. Now, if they are married to any of the sons of the tribes of the sons of Israel, I like the word sons, so let's not use the word children, the sons of Israel, then their inheritance will be taken from the inheritance of our fathers, and that would be from Manasseh, right? Manasseh. And it will be added to the inheritance of the tribe in which they marry. And then it will be taken from the lot of our inheritance. Now, this is a very serious issue if we're not careful. You see, back in Numbers chapter 27, when the daughters of Zelophehad came and says, our fathers do not have sons, right? They died. And now, how is it that his name does not carry any inheritance? And so God said, that's fair. to be fair, in that particular situation, when a man does not have sons, then their daughters will inherit the land. And that was a given. All agreed. Now the question was in verse 3. If they are married to the sons of the other tribes, meaning not from Manasseh, right? He's from Manasseh. If the women are married to other tribes other than Manasseh, then the sons of Manasseh, sons of the other tribes where they marry, they will inherit the land. And so Manasseh will have land that will be smaller and smaller and smaller because these women would marry other sons of the other tribes. So the other tribes will gain. And then their tribe will lose. Because it's the same piece of land. In a patriarchal family system, the woman's property belongs to the man. And so when the woman comes and marry another tribe, a son from another tribe, then the property gets absorbed under the son, the husband. And so the children then will then inherit, and the children will be the tribe of the father. The children would never be the tribe of the mother. And so the property under the father will have enlarged, taken from Manasseh. And the ladies from Manasseh gets married over, and their total inheritance of Manasseh will be shrunk by that amount. That's verse 3. It's a very, very real problem, a very real situation. Now we have another case. And when the Jubilee of the sons of Israel comes, then their inheritance will be added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they marry. So their inheritance will be taken away from the inheritance of the tribe of our fathers. Now, there is a year of Jubilee, which is the year after the seventh Sabbath year. So 49 plus 1, that would be the 50th year, right? Now, in the 50th year, the year of Jubilee is that if there is a land that is sold, then in the year of Jubilee, it will be given back to the original owner of the land. So had Manasseh sold the land to a son from Judah, and when the year of Jubilee comes, the son of Judah has to return the land back to Manasseh. But in this case, in verse 4, it says, but when the year of Jubilee comes, nothing will happen. Why? Because the land was not sold. The land is still owned by the daughters. And so when they are married, then eventually the land belongs to the children, and the children are recognized by their father's tribe. And so that whatever property the mother had now belongs to the tribe. That's absorbed by marriage. This is the condition and situation which they have now noted to be very serious. Then in verse 5, then Moses commanded the sons of Israel according to the word of the Lord. Now understand, every time you see the word of the Lord, God has an issue that he wants to communicate, and somehow he has communicated to Moses. And Moses becomes also the prophet because he sees God, and the text tells us he sees God face to face as a friend. And in this case, God speaks to him, and then he conveys God's answers to the sons of Joseph. And so God says, what the tribe of the sons of Joseph speaks is right. Now, this word here, verse 5, when it says right, this means it is so. That's what the word right, translated right, means. It means can. Whatever this tribe of the sons of Joseph was saying, it is so. I guess they don't have this expression says right or wrong. They have the expression of good and evil, tov and ra. And when it says, if what you say is true, then they will express this as the word can. And can means it what you say is exactly the case. That's what it means. This is what the Lord commands concerning the daughters of Zelo, uh, Zelo, Zelophehad, right? And this is what God is saying. Let them marry. I guess you can say, how should we say? Let them marry whom they think is best. This is a phrase here. Uh, let them uh, let them be let them be let them be a woman, a woman to those who is tov in their eyes. And so it is correct in a very simplistic English word, but technically God is saying when the woman sees one whom she thinks is good in her eyes, then let her be a woman, right? Let her be the wife. But they may only do so within the family of their father's tribe. So for the exception where a woman, the daughters inherit the inheritance, there is also an exception to their freedom to marry. And because they had the exception of inheriting a property and being a woman in a patriarchal system, the woman must ensure that the husband to be is also from the same clan, so that the children will be from the same clan and will inherit the mother's property and still within the same tribe. And so the inheritance of the sons of Israel shall not change hands. This is important. From tribe to tribe, for every one of the sons of Israel shall keep the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. Now, and every daughter who possesses an inheritance in any tribe of the son of Israel shall be the wife of one of the family of the father's tribe, so that the sons of Israel each may possess the inheritance of his fathers, and nobody will lose anything. Thus, no inheritance shall change hands from one tribe to another, but every tribe of the children of Israel shall keep his own inheritance. This is the justice of God. God already pronounced justice when the father does not have sons to inherit, so let the daughters do that. And the second point of justice is that the property must stay in the family, so the daughters cannot marry, in this particular case, anybody else. For all other daughters, they are free to marry. And so for the sake of justice of the inheritance, that it does not change hands, these women who inherited inheritance must marry within the tribe. Verse 10, just as the Lord commanded Moses, so did the daughters of Zelophehad. And then here in verse 10, we have Machlah, we have Titzah, we have Hoglah, we have Milcah, and we have Noah. Now, understand this is not Nu. This is Noah. This is the sound of the name. The daughters of Zelophehad, they were married to the sons of their father's brothers. Now, what does that mean? They were married to the sons of their father's brothers. When I talk about brothers here, it would be the sons of the uncles, right? You could think of it, their uncles. The sons of their uncles. So they are marrying their cousins, if you like. Verse 12. They were married into the families of the children of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of their father's family. And that resolved the major problem here. And so verse 13, it ends, the book of Numbers ends this way. These are the commandments and the judgments which the Lord commanded the children of Israel by the hand of Moses in the plains of Moab by Jordan from Jericho. Now, with this, we come to the end of the book of Numbers. I want to draw your attention to the last line. These are the commandments and the judgments which the Lord Jehovah had commanded the sons of Israel by the hand of Moses, by the authority of Moses, where they are now in the plains or in the desert of Moab. You actually can call this the wilderness, the Arava, right? This word here is the Arava of Moab by the Jordan. I think that this is where you see the banks of the Jordan River on the side of the eastern shore, right? And that would be somewhat across from Jericho or Jericho. Now let us do a wrap up. In today's wrap up of the book of Numbers, I would like to use the book of Deuteronomy chapter 8 as our starting point. And it's I guess it's very important for us to understand Deuteronomy chapter 8 is at the very last months, because Numbers chapter 36 carries us into the final year, right? That's the 40th year, reading from chapter 20. And after whatever has transpired, after God has spoken to them, then Moses did a review in the book of Deuteronomy. And right in chapter 8, he says this: every commandment which I commanded you today, you must be careful to observe, that you may live, multiply, go in and possess the land of which the Lord swore to your fathers. That's the faithfulness of God. And you shall remember that the Lord led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to teach them, first to humble them so that they know who is Elohim, to test them so that God will know whether they would keep his commandments or not. God humbled them, allowed them to hunger, and fed them with manna, which they did not know, the fathers did not know, that he might make you know that this is important. The man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes out from the mouth of God. Now, more importantly is this. We move down into verse 6. Therefore, you should keep the commandments of the Lord your God, to walk in his ways and to fear him. I use this as a summary of the book of Numbers, particularly because the book of Numbers continues from the book of Exodus and gives us the 40-year journey. It starts from the second year, and from chapter 40, it starts from the 40th year. And in that 40th year, a few people died. First, Miriam in chapter 20, then Aaron, and then Moses, the last to die. And during that whole period of time, everyone was virtually dead. Now, when I say everyone, we're talking about the first generation who left Egypt in Exodus chapter 12 and 13. So they are the ones who refuse to go into the promised land. But the second generation who came out of Egypt, which would be those who are below 20, and now in Deuteronomy chapter 8, uh, that will be the third generation. That will be those who were born in the wilderness. And in Deuteronomy chapter 1 reminds us that these are the ones who are innocent. They haven't decided what was good and evil. They did not participate in the decision not to go into the promised land. And so they went through the course of the 40 years, and only now they are reviewing this, and God says, you shall keep the commandments of the Lord your God. What commandments, we may ask? And so I would like to submit to you that much of what is said in that 40 years, as we have seen here, the 40 years that they have traversed the wilderness are all the things that God instructed them, are all the disciplining and correction God has given them, are all the testing that God has put them through, and showed them who God is. That these Israelites have no right to demand of God of anything. And so these 40 years are for this young two generations to learn who is Elohim and who is man. And so God humbled them and fed them with man, or in the normal English, manna, which they have never seen. God gave them heavenly bread, and God gave them water from the rock. But God told them that you must keep my commandments so that you know who is Elohim and who is human. And so it's important then for us to go through the book of Numbers, because the book of Numbers really tells us who God is, what he did in those 40 years, the census he did, the instructions he gave, how certain people behaved badly, how God judged them, to show how just God is. And the last chapter of Numbers 36 also told us how fair God is. Because when it comes with regards to the inheritance that God wanted to give Israel, God wants to make sure that the inheritance stays within the tribes. And so in 36 chapters, records 39 years, almost 39 years of experiences. However, a large part of these 39 years, and when I say 39 is because Exodus gave us the first year, Numbers started the second year, and then in chapter 20, it goes into the 40th year. And in the book of Deuteronomy, it carries on to the last few months of Moses, and he died. And that would be the end of the 40th year. And so what's important now for us to realize is God did not record all the minuscule details of 39 years. God left us with what he has decided would be important elements that we can also learn when we are in today's timetable, that we are looking back and everything we read in the book of Numbers is relevant in principle, is relevant to see how God operates, how fair God is. You would notice that the idea of love is unspoken. God loved Israel, but the book of Numbers never talked about that. The way God loved Israel is that God gave Israel a lot of things. God provided them with shelter and food and drink. And in all cases, God kept them alive. You see, when God says that he is faithful to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God is also loving the children of Jacob, who are Israelites, and ensure that they live and survive this episode before they get into the promised land to accept the delivery of God's faithful promise, which they almost didn't. Because in Numbers chapter 13 and 14, they disobeyed God and they decided not to go in. And so that generation died, and the rest of the generations, number 2 and number 3, entered into the promised land. And so the book of Numbers gave us a lot of events that is important to us today. Now, the English name of the book Numbers, or I guess it is taken from the Greek name Numbers, is to highlight that there were 2 censuses done in the book of Numbers, one in chapters 2 and 3, and then in chapters 26. And so the Greeks decided to call this book Numbers. However, the Jews do not call this book Numbers. They call this book Bamidbar, in the wilderness, right? In the wilderness. Basically, the name of this book comes from this, in the wilderness, Bamidbar. And everything that happened in this book happened in the wilderness, not in the promised land. And that is the summary of Deuteronomy chapter 8. Everything that Moses is telling them, please remember. And also understand that God is faithful. God wants to test them, wants them to realize who is God, who is man, and to keep his commandments and to fear God. That's everything that the 39 years are supposed to teach them. Not to map out the journey, but to learn what is important to God and to do them and to fear God. God has shown himself to be very fair. When he destroyed, it was with a good cause. It was against his principles and it was against his character when these people sinned against God. And even in the case of the inheritance by the daughters, God resolved that. And it is written in Numbers chapter 36. And why were they written? Because today we're not talking about any inheritance, but it was left for us today so that we know that God is just. Not that God is love, but God is just. God loved Israel by providing for Israel. But God is just so that everyone will know that there will be justice served in the land where God or Jehovah is God, in the land where they honor God as God, in the land where Jehovah is God over all. And so the commands that Moses commanded is all through Numbers, chapters 1 to 36. And I would submit to you that it will require us to go through the book of Numbers again to pick out specifically what God has instructed, what are the principles that we can derive, how we can recognize God and not be flippant with God and treat God as God, treat Elohim as Elohim, treat Jehovah as our Elohim. And so that we are not here fooling around with God, but we are absolutely serious that God is a consuming fire, that we understand and appreciate that God will judge, and that we have gone through the book of Numbers, knowing full well what God has instructed the children of Israel, that it is for us today to be mindful of the seriousness of God's words. Do not treat God as a chump. Do not treat God as your mate. Do not treat God as anyone of our equal. God is God. We are the ones who are his creature. And God is the one who is instructing. And we are the one who will have to obey and to do what is said. And with this, we come to the end of our chapter today. And I trust that we have had a good study in the book of Numbers. And we will cover a different book starting from next week.